Before we begin, just a quick note. This episode includes discussions of traumatic events, including the 7/7 London terrorist attacks and other situations that can lead to PTSD in the emergency services. We believe these subjects are important to talk about, but please be aware they are discussed within this episode. Freemasonry has always been about more than tradition and ceremony. It's about service, community, and standing beside those in need. Today, we're shining the light on that very spirit through a story of courage, resilience, and brotherly support. We're joined by someone whose life's work embodies those values, Gary Hayes, a Freemason from Unison Lodge and the founder of PTSD-999, a charity dedicated to supporting our emergency service workers battling from often hidden wounds of trauma. This conversation is about real lives, real impact, and the role Freemasons have played in helping this mission grow. My name is Sam, and as always, I'm joined by Paul. How are you, Paul?
Hello, Sam. I'm good.
Good. Have you been up to much?
We went to a great meeting last week.
We did, both of us, yes.
One of the friendliest lodges I've ever been to in my life.
Without a doubt.
It was Unison Lodge.
Yes, Gary invited us along, didn't he?
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Absolutely.
So funny as well.
Yeah.
I was wetting myself throughout the festive board.
So, as ever, Paul, I have a quote for you. I've got a...
Yep.
I've
Looking forward to this.
Yeah, I've got a quote from Rudyard Kipling, obviously a famous Freemason, and someone we spoke about on our history subject.
Yep.
Yeah, so if you haven't heard that, go back and listen to that podcast. Here's the quote from Rudyard Kipling. The strength of the pack is the wolf. The strength of the wolf is the pack. What do you think of that? You must like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. Oh, every time I try and make it so you actually like it, but okay, fair enough. So to help us understand what PTSD-999 is all about and how Freemasonry has helped along the way, we're joined by its founder, Gary Hayes. Gary served in the services himself and experienced firsthand the emotional toll it can take. That led him on a personal journey, one that turned pain into purpose and ultimately into a thriving charity that's now making a huge difference across the UK. Let's dive into that journey and the work of PTSD-999 and how the Masonic community has supported this vital cause. So welcome, Gary. How are you?
Very well, thanks for the invite.
Well, thank you for the invite to your lodge as well.
Yeah,
Genuinely, we enjoyed that. Absolutely brilliant. So, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your background in the services?
Yeah, when I was a young lad, way back when, everyone, including myself, we wanted to be professional football players. So, born in the 60s, growing up through the 70s, playing football through that period. And then one day, I just decided I was going to join the army. Northern Ireland was a big thing. And my parents were very reluctant to let me go in as a boy soldier. So basically they wouldn't let me do it. So I snuck away to the local recruiting office in Romford, went through bits and pieces there and got tested at Forest Gate and ended up joining the Royal Green Jackets in the latter part of 84 and started my basic training in 85. Yeah, had a great time in the military, memories that will last forever. Friends that certainly will last forever, and it's very akin, dare I say, to Freemasonry. You make friends for life, and again, you've all got that common theme. You're looking out for each other, and you'll do your best for everyone else. I left the military because I met the wife, and she was starting her career as a police officer. I went away on a tour down to the Falkland Islands in 87 through to 88, and we got married in 89. Sort of regretted leaving, so I went straight back down to our local territorial unit and basically had another amazing 8 years instructing in there. Everyone kept saying, you make a good copper. It wasn't something on my bucket list, but eventually I caved in, and in 2003 I became a very mature police student, for want of a better word. I was about 33, 34 years old, and I embarked on an incredible journey. Policing for me with the British Transport Police was just the best. I think in the world of policing, the Transport Police were the best kept secret, purely by the nature of the work that we used to do. Very challenging at times. Unfortunately, dealt with a lot of fatalities. But you know what? It was you really did form a bond with the guys that you worked with because you was dealing with some pretty unpleasant stuff. So yeah, it was a great time. 2005 came along and we had the London bombings, which literally changed the face of policing. For me, I was part of our anti-terrorism team at the time. We were expecting something, but like all those sort of incidents, you couldn't time, date or place it. And it happened when I was on paternity leave. Our youngest lad, he came a few days early. Had he not, due date was 7/7. So I took a phone call from the wife, funny enough. I'm in a nappy aisle at Tesco's, as you do as a new dad again, filling up a basket full of nappies and bits and pieces, and she said to me, "Oh, you heard what's happened on the rail network?" Like, no, there's been some sort of power surge. I don't think there has. I'll phone you back. Phone up one of the lads, and it was just a case of, "Look, mate, better get your grip bag. We've just been bombed. Stand by. We've just been bombed again." So I knew I wouldn't be able to get to work that day. However, the following day I got in and it was pandemonium, absolute chaos. And one of my bosses came to see me and he just said to me, "Oh, ex-forces?" So I said, "Oh, a long time ago. He went, "Good, you're going down to the temporary mortuary." We'd all had heard a lot of stuff about what was going on and in that environment, and it wasn't very pleasant. So I didn't want to go, purely by the nature of I knew what was going to sort of be taking place down there. And I sort of put my old rifleman's head on and said, "Well, Gov, you've got to be a sergeant to get down there and to conduct those duties that you want me to do." And he went, "Yep, congratulations, Sergeant Hayes, now off you go." I sort of duly promoted in the field. And I was like, oh, God.
It's like a film.
Oh, technically, when I look back, yeah, it really was. And I went down there. It was like walking down onto a film set because there was so much going on. But to see it, literally all the playing field dressed in all this tentage, I was, to say I was anxious, I think, would be an understatement, because I knew as soon as I walked into that tented area, I knew what I was sort of going to see. You know, sadly dealt with numerous fatalities and other sort of serious incidents prior to that. So, you know, it was an area that, whilst it was going to be unpleasant, it was something that someone had to do. And, you know, I was part of a brilliant team during that period. And we was all working towards that same end game, and that was to repatriate the deceased back to their loved ones in a dignified manner. And I'd put a lot of safeguarding in for myself because it was becoming, for some officers, a bit too personal. You know, you just try and look after yourself as best you can. And having a new baby, 2 other young boys, it was like, go home, help the wife out. And I remember saying to me, and we use it as part of our presentation, that I came home one night, having done a sort of 14, 15 hour day, got home and was clearly not with it. And she said, "I just spent all night long with a new baby in my arms, going between our room and the other 2 boys' room, just checking." A weird thing, just checking on them. You know, it was just weird. And it came to that time in the morning, put the little one back in the crib, quick shower, get my kit on, and go back to work. And it was just a real strange time, you know. But you felt, I'm not going to say possessed, but you had this real strong sense of duty to do the right thing for the victims, because let's face it, they went to work that day expecting to go home, you know. Yeah. And unfortunately 52 people didn't go home.
Yeah. Tell us about the founding of PTSD-999. How did you get into that?
So for us within the police service, your mental health was something that really wasn't spoken about. But unfortunately, I also took the part of being the archetypal male, where I thought I was struggling with my mental health, but I didn't want to admit to it because mental health was something that didn't affect people like me. Because allegedly I was a big, strong bloke, ex-infantry soldier, the bloke that was always the first one through the door, pulling hooligans off of trains and dealing with them, you know, that person that someone could come to and give the most intimate detail to, because I'd listen. And blokes, we do it, and we still do it, and I still do it. We don't admit to ourselves that there's nothing wrong with struggling with your mental health. In fact, I would suggest sometimes you only struggle with your mental health because of all the trauma you've been exposed to. Now, for me, I went through a dark phase in the job with my mental health, and I was becoming a little bit reckless. You know, I was drinking heavily. I was looking to, especially on football days, just to get stuck into someone, because it was the only way I could sort of offload all of this anger that I had. And I remember one of my mates, again, Mick was with us last week, and he said to me after one event, he went, "Mate, you really need to go and get yourself checked out because you're out of control." And that's hard, because that's your best mate. That's your oppo from work, bloke who's got your back 24/7. And again, I refused to acknowledge what he'd said to me, because, you know, mental health doesn't affect me. All the trauma that we'd been through, you know, I also had childhood trauma that I'd never spoke to anyone about, and sort of carried that forward, and got involved with something off duty that eventually was going to cost me my job as a warranted officer. And that's when the penny dropped, when I turned my warrant card in. It was absolutely awful. I think Robin Williams made this quote about clans always wearing a mask, but underneath that mask, that individual's properly broken.
Yeah.
And that was me.
That is, yes.
You know, I'd gone from being a happy-go-lucky individual, do anything for anyone, literally,
Yeah.
but become so self-destructive. And I got to a point where I went to take my own life. I just couldn't cope with the fact that I wasn't that strong individual that everyone thought I was. Yeah, so I attempted to take my own life. You know, thankfully I didn't do that. Got back home, told the war department what I just tried to do. We had a good cry. And then just, dare I say it, it's a word that you don't really hear about a lot now, use, but I just tried to man up. As I was always told as a young bloke, man up, suck it up, buttercup, all the rest of the little sort of terminologies. And I just felt instantly, what can I do to try and prevent this from happening to other people? Because I've been to countless fatalities on the railway where the individual concerned had in fact been a serving member of our blue light family. Was there anything in place? Not a lot. It's like, well, me being me, it's just a case of, right, let's kick the door in, let's break down them barriers, and let's just start doing something. So myself and the other co-founder, Simon, a former military individual, we sat down and we were quite open and frank to each other. I knew that Simon had struggled from his time during the Balkans conflict. Simon was an officer in the parachute regiment, and a lot of his guys would come to him on, you know, prior to leaving the service and say, "Look, thanks boss, blah, blah, blah. Civvy Street, bit of a shocker. Don't know what I'm going to do." But a lot ended up going into the blue light family. So he had that connection. And obviously we were mates. And it started off as a bit of a social media thing. And all we were trying to do was just encourage blokes, especially blokes. And this sounds a little bit negative towards the good ladies that, you know, surround us and everything else. But primarily, blokes are the worst for showing any emotion. That's a statistic we can't get away from.
Yeah.
And we started off with a little bit of a Facebook thing, and it just did what it did. It just grew legs. And we were like, well, we need to get a clinical team involved now, because we can't cope. We're not clinically trained in this area, other than being able to listen and not judge, to, I guess, have a full understanding of what's being said to us. But clinical intervention was something we needed. So we developed that. We got a good clinical team around us. But then we hit the brick wall of, well, how are we going to fund it? I let some of the brethren know what we were doing, just really to ask them to pass the word around. But knowing that there were a lot of guys and female colleagues as well that were in the emergency services, and very often in the same situation as myself. You just crack on, but not getting any help because you're too proud to put your hand up and go, do you know what, I'm actually struggling. You know, you go to work. I loved it. I can't keep saying that enough. It was a great job. But on reflection, what was there to help me or prevent me going to that dark place that I went to? Not a lot.
Yeah.
So what does PTSD-999 do on a day-to-day? How do they help?
We take phone calls, emails from the men and women within the service, also those that have retired, from family members also. And they'll pose a question to us, and we'll listen, and we will give them some advice on how to deal with that situation, because invariably, if they speak to me, we've probably had a very similar experience. Yeah. So, you know, I'm not clinically trained. However, I'm a chronic complex sufferer of the condition. So I get it. Literally, I've got the T-shirt, and that's something I didn't think I'd ever say. I've got the T-shirt, and whatever you was to say to me, I really do understand. We go through all the different other aspects of PTSD with the drinking issues and drugs and gambling and any other addiction you can think of, because that's a massive part of PTSD. Now, if someone was to say to me, can you help me, I need a diagnosis, then we'll pass them on to our clinical team. And then what's said between them and the clinical team remains between them. And technically, I always say to people that should you want to call me once you've completed treatment, or if it's not going the way that you want it to go, then give me a call and we'll see if we can get another clinician, because it's about you.
Yeah.
It's not about that strict medical condition and the diagnosis. It's about getting you through that next phase. And you can only do that if you're going to get on with your clinician.
If you can build rapport with them.
Absolutely, and trust.
Yeah.
Trust is a major, major factor. So that's what we do. We go up and down the country delivering a PTSD awareness presentation, which lasts roughly between an hour and a half to 2 hours. And dare I say, it's a presentation that holds no punches, really. We don't dress it up for all the nice fluffy stuff. It's raw. It's a lived experience, and it's broken down into a couple of phases. The opening phase, really, we show and talk about the signs and symptoms of post-traumatic stress. We play a very powerful audio clip which describes vicarious post-traumatic stress. Now, what we mean by that is you don't, and again, this is something I didn't really understand until we got hold of this recording for our presentation. And so vicarious PTSD is quite simple. You don't have to be that person, the paramedic, the firefighter, the cop out there dealing with that difficult and often very nasty situation. You could be someone, you could be a call taker, taking that emergency call. You could be a scenes of crimes officer, going to that scene. You could be an officer working in a case management unit, looking at files and images of acts of terrorism, child sexual exploitation, human trafficking. The list goes on. And I think once you understand that someone can be equally impacted by not being out there as opposed to those that are, again, it breaks down a lot of barriers. And we often, once we've hit that part, people sit in the room and you can just see them mentally now ticking stuff off in their head. And even more so, you get officers, support staff who that's their job. And they'll always come up afterwards and go, thanks.
Yeah.
Because no one gets it.
Yeah.
No one understands what we do.
You may think because you wasn't there, there's people worse off than you, not accepting that it's actually affecting you.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the other big stigmas is, I think, that we need to understand that trauma's trauma. And it's like us three sitting in this room now. Trauma's very specific to all three of us. And trauma means something completely different to what it might mean to you or to you. And it's, again, breaking down those barriers to get people to understand it a bit. I'm not going to say a bit better, but just to make them a little bit more aware. And then we move on to a musical sort of break in the presentation. Now, one of our patrons is a guy called Dennis Stratton. He was one of the founding members of Iron Maiden. He did this music video for us about 7 years ago now, 8 years ago. And the rest of the band were made up with young guys who were children of emergency service workers. And I don't say anything to anyone when we reach that part. I just say to them, can you just please sit and watch at least the first 2 minutes of this video, because the makeup of the band is very important when it comes to the second half of the presentation. So we've got Dan and the boys playing. It's great. It's a wonderful cover of David Bowie's Heroes. I love it. And then we move on to the last sort of phase of the presentation, which is our case study. And again, very impactful. And we show a short film that we made with our president, Graham Cole, formerly the Bill. We played Tony Stamp. So, and Graham's been a great friend of mine for nearly 30 years. I mean, I met him on the set of the Bill. I used to do all the firearms stuff on there for him back in the day. Be part of the team of the firearms boys and girls that used to come in and smash the cars around and put doors in. So, Graham's been with me through that journey. And we made this wonderful film called Broken Glass, which you can see it's on YouTube. And it really encapsulates the hour and a half, 2 hours presentation, because it shows all the signs and symptoms of someone that he knows. And then the the dramas that really follow someone when they've retired from the service, who's not spoken to anyone. And eventually that character picks up the telephone and makes that call. We then go back to our case study. I won't give it away. And then the band members are the sons of the case study. And I show a little diary that one of the kids had written. And it blew me away when I first saw it, and I got the individual's permission to use it. And he drew a picture of his dad, which was the devil incarnate. I mean, the horns, the sharp teeth, the angry face, everything. Mum was near enough the same, but with a halo around her head. And then he drew a picture of himself, his middle brother and his younger brother, all sort of smiley kids, but with a little tear sort of thing going on. And again, in the room, people get it because they're parents or grandparents, or they know someone whose kids are going through a very difficult time because their mum or dad isn't prepared to admit that they're struggling. So once we've completed the presentation, without even trying, we've changed lives. We've potentially saved lives. And moving on from that, we provide mental health first aid courses, nationally recognised by Mental Health First Aid England. And we've got a specific training facility that we use for that. And so we're putting back into the blue light family mental health first aid that is not costing that part of the job anything other than the officer's weekend, really, because it's over a 2-day period, and that costs us sort of 1,600 quid, possibly a little bit more. But again, we can only cover the cost of that by the amazing donations we get from the craft, from other people doing fundraising events for us. But it's just giving the people that ability to go back into work with the knowledge of the signs and symptoms, not only for themselves, but for their colleagues. We've literally just had our first year as an official registered charity, and it's been testing. But if it wasn't for the craft, I'll be very open and honest, we wouldn't be where we are now. We would be struggling. Listen, we have not got our heads above the water at all. My mouth and nose keeps dipping below that waterline, and it's every day's a struggle, as I'm sure you're aware.
It sounds like to me that your focus is education, making people kind of understand the signs and symptoms of PTSD. Do you find that a lot of people won't accept they've got it? You said earlier about you kind of hiding to yourself about it.
Absolutely. I got diagnosed back in 2012 by my GP, who just said, anyone who's been in the armed forces has got post-traumatic stress, and that was it.
Yeah.
And he went, doing the job that you do, dealing with people on the tracks and stuff, I suppose that affects you. And that was almost verbatim. You just think, okay. But when I got a full and constructed diagnosis by the then top forensic shrink in the country, it was sort of like, it's all falling into place now. My behaviour patterns. I was an angry badger. I was drinking like I was an 18-year-old, and whilst I wasn't, how can we put it, physically violent against my family, the verbal aggressiveness was unforgiving, and I made my kids' lives a misery, and my wife's, and we were close to getting divorced because I just wouldn't admit that I was struggling.
What was the road to recovery?
It was very difficult, and I found the way forward for me was to go overboard in helping others. Once we put it out there that we were starting PTSD-999, I would just sit and wait for that phone call or that email to drop in, and I'd be straight on it. But I find it quite cathartic in the fact that I'm actually helping someone, and I'm not even trying to do it, by sitting and listening and talking and having that very open conversation. And when you get messages come to you that just simply say, thanks for saving my life, as I say, I'm not here for a pat on the back or a medal or a ticker tape parade, but it's just, it's just nice knowing that you've done that. I'm not going to get away from the fact I still have nightmares, I still have flashbacks, I still punch and kick out of a night time. But thankfully that's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. I recognise a lot of my triggers now, and when I feel I'm getting close to that, I've got a very good sort of circle around me now. Whether it be a Masonic circle, my family, my kids, they'll just go, I'm like, okay, that's adds up enough. They don't have to say anything,
Kind of like sponsors, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It's such a strong thing to have now. Again, it's taken me a long time to recognise that. a hell of a long time. But again, I'll always encourage people, if you can't talk to your job or to your nearest and dearest, give us a call.
Yeah.
You know, it's as simple as that.
Without kind of breaching confidentiality, are there any moments or stories where PTSD-999 has helped someone out that you can share?
Yeah, there are loads, but one specific job we did, we went up to Scotland to give our presentation, and we was up in this brand new building at a secret location, and we had a huge audience, and this gentleman sort of sat there and he was watching and listening intently to what we were saying. As we concluded the presentation, this gentleman collapsed, and it was like, wow. Went over to make sure he was okay, and he was in floods of tears. I mean, yeah, he was like almost in a state of shock. He was convulsing, he was shaking, he was crying, he was in a bad way. Anyway, we ended up talking with him and calmed him down. We found out that the ladies around him were not only colleagues, but one was his wife. And she sort of said, look, I can't believe it's taken you guys to come all the way up here to recognise that he was struggling, because everything we'd said in the presentation, he was not, tipping his head as if ticking something off in his own little checklist. Anyway, 6-7 months later, he WhatsApped me, and I've still got the message on my phone now. And it was a bit of an introduction, and then he just went, I just want to say to you, Gary, thank you for saving my life. You know, when you just go,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's heavy.
How has Freemasonry helped PTSD-999?
We have had numerous donations come into us, which has been amazing. Each time I open the email and there's an email, here's a cheque for £250, here's a cheque for £100, £500. It's mind-blowing. You know, it's people don't realise, even with the smallest donation, you are effectively helping towards saving a life within our emergency services.
So the last thing I've got to ask you is, because you've gone through this massive journey, it's quite unbelievable, really, your journey, to be perfectly honest. So, and one of your, as you have said yourself, your path out of it has been helping people. How does that feel to actually not just desire to help them, to have helped so many? How does that feel for you?
I'm very lucky, Sam, to be quite honest with you. I've got an amazing group of people around me. So the acknowledgement should go in my eyes to the people that have helped. I'm just a fat face for PTSD-999. I've got a face for radio, and that's it. It's so I get told so many times, but it is honestly, it's so humbling. For me, it's all about the team, the amazing people around me, and as you saw last week, the amazing brethren, without whom we wouldn't have achieved half the stuff that we have. And I'll always be grateful. But for me, it's always going to be, even with my last dying breath, it's just going to be crack on, troops. Just keep doing the right thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What a podcast.
I know.
At the end of each podcast, I have Sam's final thought. I do pre-write them, if I'm perfectly honest, and I don't know if I can finish any much better. It's 2 times that's happened now, isn't it, to be perfectly honest? Honestly, thank you, Gary.
Oh, thanks for the invite, guys. It's again, it just means a lot to me that you've taken the time out to acknowledge what we're doing. And I am honestly humbled by that, and thank you. Thank you for your support.
Well, I will add that we're going to have all the contact details in the description.
Brilliant.
As well.
Thank you.
So we'll get your charity out as much as we can as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
But fantastic. Well, what we have heard today is more than just a story. It's a reminder of what Freemasonry looks like in action, when compassion meets commitment and support is offered without expectation. We live out the values we hold dear. Through Gary's courage and vision, PTSD-999 is offering hope to those who have spent their careers protecting others. And through the support of Freemasonry, that mission continues to grow. We should all remember that, sometimes, the most Masonic thing to do is simply to help.